Good day and welcome to the Let's Get Real About Caregiving conference call. Today's conference is being recorded. And now at this time, I would like to turn the conference over to Jennifer Gillette. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Jay. Yes, my name is Jennifer Gillette, and I'm the staff social worker at the National Bone Marrow Transplant LINK, and I'd like to welcome everyone on the call today. Yes, this program this month is going to be focusing on caregiving. A special thank you to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, Insight Corporation, Pharmacyclics and Janssen, and Ameris Corporation, and of course our esteemed LINK partners for making this program possible. Just a brief little outline so everyone knows how we are going to run today. First, I'm going to give just a couple moments of information about nbmtLINK for those of you who are not familiar with us. And then we're going to mix things up a little bit today. We're going to have our caregiver voice first for you, Jim Bolger, and then I, as the staff social worker for nbmtLINK, will be sharing some information, and then we'll open up the floor for questions and comments. For those of you who may not be familiar with the LINK, our mission is dedicated to helping individuals and their families from diagnosis through survivorship. We provide resources, support, and education. Some of the resources we provide to help families navigate their transplant journey are our webinars, podcasts, blogs, and lunch and learn calls for a variety of topics such as chronic graft versus host disease or disease-specific information, caregiving, coping, treatment options, and survivorship after transplant. We have an active Facebook page with daily inspiration and relevant tips and updates for survivors, as well as a peer support mentor program for our patients, for caregivers, and for donors as well. We have our second birthdays recognition program. We have books, referrals, and emotional support from a licensed social worker. So please feel free to reach out to us if there's anything we can do to be supportive of you. Before we begin today's program, just a couple housekeeping items. Try to be concise with questions if you can, just so we can get as many in as possible. And also, please know that anything shared in today's program is not specific medical advice. Your medical plan is between you and your healthcare provider. So now on to the educational part of our program. We're so thankful to have our first speaker here with us, Jim Bolger. Jim and Nancy live in Woodstock, Georgia, outside of Atlanta. In 1996, Nancy was diagnosed with diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, underwent 6 months of chemotherapy, and went into full remission. Unexpectedly, 21 years later, in 2017, Nancy's cancer returned. She then went through another 18 months of chemo, and since the cancer persisted, she was referred to the Blood and Marrow Transplant Group of Georgia, where it was determined that a bone marrow transplant would be necessary. In January of 2019, Nancy received an allogeneic transplant with cells from an anonymous outside donor. Thanks to the skill of her doctors and Nancy's strength and determination, Nancy is now 2 years post-transplant. All of her tests now show no evidence of cancer, and she's doing great. The journey that she and Jim, as her caregiver, have experienced over the last 2 years has reshaped their relationship, their priorities, and the way they look at and appreciate the little things in life. Without further ado, Jim Bolger. Thanks for joining us, Jim.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Speaking as a caregiver here and realizing that everybody's experiences are different. Obviously not a role that I was expecting or a role that I was necessarily prepared for. And before I tell you about our journey a little bit, let me just say that, and I'm sure the other caregivers listening in may be able to relate to this, you never really feel you're good at being a caregiver. You'll have friends and family that'll tell you, oh, you're so good at this. Or even the patient will tell you what a good caregiver you are. But you never yourself really feel like you're doing enough. We always want to be the protector as a husband, as a father, as a friend. We always want to think that we can stand in the way of anything bad happening. Well, in this case, you really can't protect them from this. So instead, you move from protector to provider. I always consider myself to be part of the team that was caring for Nancy. She had the doctors, great nurses, and others who, with their knowledge and their expertise, could handle all of her medical needs. I mean, they knew the procedures, they knew the prescriptions, they knew the dosages, they knew the treatment schedule. But then it falls kind of on the caregiver to handle everything else. And you start thinking about what can you really provide? You know, the obvious thing is comfort and support. A lot of it is just always being there. You know, with Nancy, I was there for every appointment. I was there for every blood test. I was there for every procedure. They just can never feel like they're going through this alone. They need someone to share the burden. And so that comfort, that support, that just being there part of it was one of the things that I felt I could provide. The second thing was really just running interference for her. I mean, she had a lot to deal with. Obviously, these patients, they're so strong. And they're going through so much and so much that's foreign to them. I mean, you know, this has obviously, you know, physical impact, and it has emotional impact, and it has financial impact. I mean, and they're just going through so much that to run interference so that they didn't have to deal with any of the ancillary things surrounding their treatment, they could just really focus on feeling better. So, you know, I handled being the communication link between us and family and friends. I mean, you know, people are always, and God love them for doing this. I mean, people were always reaching out and wondering how she was doing and how things were going. And I just knew that she wasn't up to fielding all those calls and telling her story over and over and over again. So I handled that. And every couple of weeks, I would send out just an update email to all of our family and friends, letting them know where she was in the procedures and what the latest news was and how she was doing. Obviously, there are, you know, sites like Caring Bridge out there where you can post some of that as well. And I handled all of the schedules, all of the logistics. And there's a ton of them. I mean, from doctor's appointments to prescription schedules, insurance filings, insurance claims. I just decided that, or we decided, I should say, that, you know, I would handle all of that. That was just too daunting for Nancy to deal with on top of everything else that she was having to go through medically. Another part of what I could provide as a caregiver was to really be her advocate with the doctors and nurses. I mean, it's also overwhelming that every day we would talk about, okay, what kind of questions do we have for the doctors today? And I would make sure that if she didn't ask those questions, I did. And asking questions was vital for us. I mean, I'm sure the doctors and the nurses at times thought we had an awful lot of questions. But we had to try to understand what was going on. I mean, it was all so foreign to us, and we had to just get some understanding so we could deal with it. So really being her advocate with the medical team was an important part of what I could provide. And probably most importantly, just being a distraction for her. Just finding ways that she didn't always feel like a patient. You know, in the early going, Nancy, after she first got the re-diagnosis, she decided that she was not going to let this define her. She didn't want people to think of her as Nancy with cancer. She just wanted to be Nancy. And so to find times, to find ways, to find those moments where she didn't feel like a patient, where she could just feel normal, was a big part of it. And that means not making it the topic of every conversation and allowing her that space to get away from it a little bit. But it's a new normal. You know, during the last year with COVID, everybody's talked about new normals. Well, we went through that for a couple of years before COVID. I mean, caregiving is a 24/7 commitment. And we used to joke that we were going to get T-shirts made that just have like a pause button on them like you'd have on a computer. Because we were just hitting pause on life as we knew it. Our schedule, our job, everything else was just on pause. This required total focus. And part of that new normal, and I tend to be pretty organized and a pretty good planner, but part of that new normal was there is no predictability. You have to accept that plans are going to change every day, and there's no days off, and you never know what the next day is going to bring, and you're just taking it one day at a time. You pray for the good days, you prepare for the rough days, because you never know if that next blood test is going to come back and say, oh, she needs platelets, she needs a transfusion. If there's going to be a temperature check, it's going to require a hospitalization. I mean, we always had a go bag in the car, a bag that was prepared to go if she had to go into the hospital. And we just always had that in the car just in case. So like I said, you pray for the good days, you prepare for the days that are rougher. But it is one day at a time. And you have to accept those changes gracefully. You can't, as a caregiver, I couldn't ever focus on how inconvenient the changes were for me because I wasn't going through nearly what she was going through. And, the focus has to be completely on them and keeping them strong, keeping their state of mind positive, not showing the frustration, and balancing showing attention for them with also allowing them whatever freedom the doctors would allow. I mean, I know in Nancy's case, just being able to walk in the neighborhood with a mask on was a way that she could feel normal. After a few months after the transplant, she was allowed to work in her garden, which was a big thing for her. Now, yes, she had to wear a mask. She had to wear, rubber gloves under her gardening gloves. She could only be out there for an hour or so. She had to be careful what she touched because of bacteria and fungus and things, but she was able to go out and work in the garden. And just those moments of feeling normal were so important to her. And I had to allow her that freedom. You want to be protective. You want to be protective all the time. And there's a lot of monitoring that you have to do. I mean, there's prescription schedules and there's, every hour, every other hour temperature checks that you have to do. And, that protectiveness and that monitoring and balancing that with allowing her the space and the freedom that she needed to be able to deal with it too, so she didn't feel like she was, constantly being monitored or constantly being watched. And then part of it is just dealing with the side effects. And obviously the chemo and the procedures do have side effects, from nausea and blurry vision, obviously the hair loss. I think Nancy lost and regrew her hair 4 times through the process. And there's even a certain cognitive loss. She just found that her memory wasn't what it had been. And she just didn't feel as clear-headed as she had before. And weight loss. And, we were very blessed. We were very fortunate that Nancy didn't have any GVHD symptoms. But obviously, that's always something you're watching for as well. But regardless, there are side effects, and just making sure that, you're aware of those, you're monitoring those, but you're not focusing on them. And then there's, for the patient, there's emotional side effects. they're going to feel frustrated. They're going to feel a certain sense of loss and feel very restricted in what they can do and can't do. There's all the safety measures that go along with food preparation and temperature checks. And, both for the caregiver and for the patient, it's almost too much info to absorb. There's all these medical terms you never heard before. There's all these medications that you can't even pronounce. There's all these procedures that you know very little about, no matter how much reading or research you do. And it's just a lot to absorb. And that's why, again, I think teaming with the medical team and asking your questions and understanding as much as you can of not only what's being done, but what are going to be the side effects, what should we watch for, what kind of monitoring does it take. That's all a part of it. I mean, it was interesting for us that right after the transplant, we'd come home from the clinic after being there for 5, 6, 8 hours of infusions, and we'd come home, we'd just turn on the TV, just trying to get those moments of normalcy. And periodically there'd be some doctor show up, Grey's Anatomy or some show like that. And there they are in the emergency room, and they're barking out orders, and they're ordering, different medications. And we're sitting there going, oh, we know that. Oh, we know what that is. And you wind up knowing a lot more about things than you really want to know. But you also realize that you know those things that you have to know to be comfortable with what's going on. I talked before about communication with friends and family. I think one of the hard things for me initially was, invariably you get people who care, and people who, want to do something. And they're coming up to you and they're saying, so, tell us what we can do. We're here for you. What can we do? And for me, initially, my pride got in the way a little bit. And, it was kind of the natural reaction for me was, hey, thank you for asking. We appreciate it. But we got this. We'll handle it. And I quickly realized that I had to allow that kindness from others. I mean, people brought meals. And what a godsend that was for us, because after spending all day at the clinic, coming home, sitting for a couple hours, going to bed, getting up the next morning, going back in the clinic, having some meals that people brought to us, sitting in the refrigerator that all we had to do was heat up, that made our life so much easier. People just offering to sit with her for an hour, because during those months that she required constant monitoring, just allowing someone to come in and sit with her for an hour allowed me to go out and do some quick grocery shopping, or even go to the gym to kind of take care of myself through this too. And so, one thing I learned pretty quickly is allowing people to do for you is a real benefit. And, when people ask, don't push them off too quickly, because that can really make a difference for how smoothly you go through this. But a lot of it is just making the best of things. You have to celebrate the milestones, even the little ones. And what I mean by milestones is, it could be a good lab result. I mean, celebrate that. It could be when you move from going into the clinic every day to going to every other day. I mean, that was huge for us. And we really appreciated that. And we didn't let that just happen. We really celebrated it. A number of months ago, I asked Nancy, I said, through all the years that you were going through this, what was the most important thing that I did for you during that? And it was interesting. The thing that she claimed was the most important to her was that we laughed every day. And very honestly, it was a promise I made to myself when she was first diagnosed, is that I wanted her to laugh every day. I mean, laughter is that uncontrolled, positive emotion. There's so much opportunity when you're going through this for negative emotions to creep in. And to just have a couple of minutes that she just laughed, I mean, really laughed about something. He says it made all the difference for her. Some days that was tougher to do than others. Some days it was being silly. Some days it was just finding something odd around us to laugh at. But finding humor every day, and again, she claims that was one of the most important things for her. I think, as I said earlier, not making the treatment the subject of every conversation, talking about other things, being that distraction, and just kind of accepting it, and accepting it gracefully. In the very early going, someone sent me a text that just said, do what you have to do now so you can do what you want to do later. And that's kind of what you're going through. Yes, it's tough. And, you know, as a caregiver, we'll never understand what the patient is going through. They are so strong, and we have to fuel their determination because we're not going through it. We're just on the sidelines helping them where we can, but we don't truly understand everything they're feeling physically and emotionally. But do what you have to do now so you can do what you want to do later became a real mantra for us. And the other one, which I think, Jennifer, you used in some of the promotions for this, was in the early going, somebody had given Nancy a little plaque that said, you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have. And that's true. I mean, Nancy was always, and it's now again, energetic and fun-loving and full of life. And she had to be strong through this, and she was. And I admire her so much for the way she went through this. You know, I tell people all the time that she handled this the way each of us hoped we would handle it, but know that we probably wouldn't. And as you said, she's doing great today. Just this week, she went through the test for the 2-year restaging, the bone marrow biopsy, the PET scan, pulmonary test is scheduled for next week, and she's doing great. But it's definitely a journey, and you know, I thank you, Jennifer, and the National Bone Marrow Transplant Link for inviting me to tell our story to those caregivers and patients who may be listening. You know, all I can say is stay strong, stay flexible, and I wish you more normal days in the future.
Thank you so much, Jim. You and Nancy sound like just a dynamic duo, and we appreciate you sharing how the two of you got through this together, and really just sharing some great tips, but your story also is just very inspiring. So thank you so much. And now I'm going to spend a little bit of time just from a healthcare worker perspective, reaching out to you caregivers and remind you of some of the things that not only have we heard from other people that have been caregivers, but also some of the things that are considered best practices. For those of you who are note takers, I just want to remind everyone that we send the notes out within about a week. So just sit back, absorb, and allow yourself a moment, and you will be getting this information. As well as I'm going to be sending out that ASCO guide from the American Society of Clinical Oncology that a lot of these recommendations are going to be in. So anyway, though, for you caregivers who we also know as secondary survivors, often the health team isn't necessarily tuned in to what's going on in your world. And obviously the patient, they're trying their best to help them get through, but you guys have needs too. And I want you to remember that you are on this journey. There might even be some days that your stress might be higher. But, I mean, certainly I honor what Jim had said, that, of course, we have no idea what it's like to be the patient, but you caregivers certainly don't have it easy either. I know Michelle Bishop, a psychologist and caregiving expert, likens the BMT journey to a long road trip with many roads and pit stops. There are often unexpected detours as well. On this long BMT road trip, we can't actually see the final destination, and we don't really know exactly how long it's going to take, so we need to plan differently and be mindful along the way. For example, there is the period of transplant, early recovery at the transplant center, the transition home, and ongoing recovery, all that are separate roads on their own. But then there might be additional roads that you didn't even know were going to be on this trip, dealing with graft versus host disease. It's important to remember that caregivers are on this journey along with their patients. Self-care is essential for you caregivers, even though we know time is limited for these precious caregivers. But also, like Jim had mentioned, even a matter of being able to go to the grocery store, getting just a moment that you know that the person you love is being cared for, being able to do something like that and just step out a minute can be self-care. So learn to keep a pace of a marathon for yourself instead of burning out, being in sprint mode. You are trying to survive this as well. It's an honor to care for those we love, and it meets a need that they have in a very vulnerable season in their life. We get to grow as individuals being caregivers. We get the personal fulfillment of caring for them, and we get to help them beat the disease that could take them or could have taken them from us. However, we know caregiving is a 24/7 responsibility that stretches people in ways they may never have known possible. It's a labor of love that can affect your mind, body, and spirit. Today, we know 1 in 5 Americans is considered a caregiver according to AARP research, and it has gone up significantly in the last 5 years. And this informal caregiving has been associated with higher levels of depression and anxiety, higher use of psychoactive medications, worse self-reported physical health, and a compromised immune function. So again, self-care, making sure that you are getting your needs as well. Caregivers have an evolving range of responsibilities that they perform on a daily or needed basis, and this can change throughout the illness and recovery. For those of you who might be new to this journey, some of those things might be like assisting with toileting, bathing, and dressing. I remember one person had shared with us falling asleep in the bathtub shortly after his transplant. And, so it's really keeping an eye on that patient, especially in the earlier recovery phases. Giving medications, assisting with meals, grocery shopping, and other errands, helping manage symptoms and side effects. Like there's an app through cancer.net that can help you track symptoms of the person you're caring for. Doing household chores, child care, pet care, coordinating those medical appointments, driving to and from those appointments, talking with the healthcare team, advocating for the person, handling insurance and billing issues, filling prescriptions, being a confidant when necessary, providing company and encouragement, keeping those family members informed. Some people use those websites like Caring Bridge, Lots of Helping Hands, or My Lifeline. And they do all this while trying to stay sane themselves with all the other personal responsibilities they have, trying to navigate the transitional roles in the relationship and having extraordinarily little time to care for themselves. So what are some of the tips that we've heard from people on this? One, and many of these are going to echo exactly what Jim said, but saying it twice might make it stick in that brain a little better. One is make your village. Remember that caregiving is a team effort involving a group of people. It is so hard to try to take everything on, nor should you have to take everything on. What are some of the tasks above that I just mentioned that maybe there might be someone in your village is willing to help with? Another tip is being proactive, organized, and planning as much as possible. Although many things change, there might be some things that have a level of predictability that can help smooth the road, like creating a drug schedule, doctor rules, appointments, trying to have some kind of consistency. Being a problem solver is another good tip. To identify problems, find out what is needed and follow through. Prioritize what can be put on hold and simplified right now. Like, I love the pause button. I remember one caregiver told us she paid all the bills she could before they went to the transplant unit. And then, just like Jim said, put pause on and just let it go. She said, I'll deal with it when we get home, whenever that time is. And that might be something really hard to hear, but everything in life might have to just kind of stop for a bit. Or I have a friend who has something she likes to call paper plate therapy. She says that when she knows someone's going through tough times, she likes to bring easy, disposable things for people so that rather than working on dishes, they can just maybe sit down and have that few minutes of normalcy in front of the TV, or maybe get that much-needed shower. Recognize your personal strengths and weaknesses, and again, maybe using the village for some of those things. Maybe there's a family member who's really good with insurance stuff, and that can be really overwhelming to people. Allow people to come in and help where you can. Communicate openly and honestly with your partner or the person you're caring for. There's many transitions through this, so it's really good to be communicating often. Share your concerns and try to use I statements when you do, like, I feel blank when this happens. What I'd really like, maybe an example of maybe that person's too overwhelmed for visitors or constant calls, and they might say, I feel overwhelmed when I have to tell my story too much. Can you help me field those calls? And then, of course, avoiding, like, you statements. As easy as it is to get frustrated on this journey, saying things in the way like, well, you keep having everybody talk to me, that's more of a defensive term and more likely to just be hurtful. Number 7, remember to take care of yourself and that you can't do everything. When your loved one is in a better spot, maybe allowing someone to sit with them for a little while so you can get a cup of coffee with a confidant or things like that. And then always have hope. Now, some tips from ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology. They recommend coming up with a stress management plan for you caregivers. I'm going to be sending a link to their guide. It's very well done. But some of the things they mention are setting boundaries, set limits, which can help you and the person you care for. This may mean asking for help from others or taking a break. It's also important to say no when someone asks you to do something you do not want to do or do not have energy for. Right now, the energy is so limited. Don't spread yourself out. Keep that pause button of Jim's in your mind. Ask for help. Make a list of people or persons that the person who has cancer trusts and can help with specific things. And you can also, if your finances allow, hire some professional caregivers to help with chores or errands. Like, instead of house cleaning yourself, maybe you could gift yourself, if your budget allows it, to have a house cleaner for a little period of time. Find support. Feeling angry, guilty, alone, afraid, and or sad is common for caregivers. Talking with other people who are caring for a family member or friend with cancer can help you cope. Also, talking to your social worker about local resources or national or online groups. I know here at nbmtLINK we are very fond of the groups with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and there's many more out there. Make time for yourself and other relationships. Do something you enjoy, which gives you a much-needed break. Try to keep spending time with people who are important to you when you can, even if it's for shorter periods. Keep yourself healthy. Take care of your body. It's important to make sure that you also are eating right, maybe take a lap or two around the hospital floor, and staying hydrated. Also trying to sleep. Caregivers often have trouble sleeping. You may be getting up during the night to help your loved one, and you may be staying up late to get things done. Or maybe just your thoughts and emotions take a turn in the evening time. It's important that you are rested and try to get rest when you can. Again, keeping that marathon mentality. Also, avoid or ask people to not call you after a certain time so that you can get that rest. Make a list of priorities for each day that sets out realistic goals, listening to soothing music, practice relaxation techniques such as meditation or yoga, try to go outside and get a little air and sunlight when you can, and consider maybe keeping a journal to write down your personal thoughts and experiences. Having to make so many decisions and being pulled in so many directions can be hard, but some of the most common things couples feel stressed about when one becomes a caregiver are how to support each other, the changing roles and routines, less time together, financial issues, and managing daily life. Every couple handles stress in a different way, but trying to be open and honest with your spouse or partner of the way you are feeling is going to help. You may also want to share how you both are coping, how you're looking at things, the causes of those stress, and discuss ways you can support each other. Talk about your choices and changes you can make. Make focus on things other than cancer and talk about your hopes and plans for the future. And if needed, reach out to a counselor as well. Many couples share that their relationship deepened after a transplant. However, it's important to have the tools available to work through the challenges that can be faced by the caregiver, the patient, and the relationship between the two. Remember that kindness can transform someone's darkest moment with a blaze of light, and you'll never know how much your caring matters. That's a quote from Amy Leigh McCree. So be kind to each other, yourself, and your relationship, as the light you share in these times is what's really mattering. And on that note, we are going to ask Jake to inform everyone on how they can ask questions on the call, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to ask a question, please signal by pressing star 1 on your telephone keypad. Just keep in mind if you're using your speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is released to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Once again, for questions today, star 1. We'll pause to allow everyone an opportunity to signal. And a voice prompt on your phone line will indicate that you have an open line. Just state your name before posing your question. We will hear first from...
Hi,
Hello.
My name is Barbara.
Hi, I hear you. Hi, Barbara.
Hi. So I live here in New York City, Upper West Side. My husband has AML, and after 6 months of chemo in the hospital as an outpatient, 4 months of chemo, it has been determined that he, at age 75, with no comorbidities, he's in good health in all ways, is ready for a stem cell transplant. Be the Match has found a perfect match for him, and Friday he becomes an inpatient over at Weill Cornell with a very wonderful transplant specialist. Obviously, I've been the caretaker since we found out about this disease in July of 2020. I've learned a lot, but clearly I'm not a physician or a scientist. I don't know it all, and much of it still is very complex. When he goes into the hospital, he's going to be there for at least a month, at least. And I'm listening to everything that's been said. What do you think will be the best way for me to help this situation initially as we go through the few days of chemotherapy he's going to require, and then the transplant, which is scheduled for the 22nd of February or the 26th of February. What would be some of the best tools that you might suggest to me, for myself, and as a caregiver for my husband, to keep him, floating above sea level? Because I know that he's very frightened, but I know he's very brave. Anything you might suggest would be helpful.
I'm going to let Jim answer first, but I have some ideas for you too. What are your thoughts, Jim?
Well, hi, Barbara.
Hi.
I guess going into the transplant, biggest thing I'll say is that, the chemo going into the transplant, at least in Nancy's case, was rough chemo. I mean, and physically it definitely took a toll on her. And, so as far as the tools, as I said before, I mean, this is, the focus has to be on them. And I found that when she was going through that, let's face it, there's plenty of this as far as schedules and other things that are very inconvenient and unpredictable and unplanned. But I found you really had to downplay what you were going through or what I was going through, and to open up the lines of communication, because you don't want them to ever feel guilty about what they're putting you through, because then there's a chance they're going to clam up. And you're the person who knows him better than anybody and that he can be most open with. And so just allowing him that openness and being there with a listening ear, and you're not going to have all the answers. Sometimes it's just letting them vent their frustrations and their fears and their nervousness. But again, I think there's always a caution flag of whenever you start talking about how we might be inconvenienced as the caregiver, we run the risk of them feeling guilty about it and undersharing with it.
Okay, thank you. That sounds very to me.
Yeah, I always want to hear the people, because although I've walked with loved ones through cancer, I have not walked through with a loved one that I've personally helped care for with a transplant. But the one thing I will tell you, first of all, anything you can do to feed hope. This is a big undertaking, and this person that you love is going through things that he has probably never imagined could happen. So one of the things, like we have a gentleman who also had a transplant in his 70s, who is doing fabulously, by the way. I would be happy at any point, if you want to send me your information, to set up a peer for him that he could talk to just remind him that, you can come out the other side doing really well with this. Because a lot of times you hear things and you feel things, and it's so scary. So something like that could really be helpful. Is also one other thing I was going to recommend is trying to set the foundation for you to have support too. If you know that this is coming, like starting to talk to people on who might be able to help with what, or maybe, like I had mentioned, I think that one person who, she paid bills ahead of time as much as she could, but then she just put the pause button on, So doing what you can so that you feel like you're going to be in the best possible spot to put that pause button on, and making sure that, whatever helps you in life, what strengths it are, or what strengths have helped you through other tough things. Of the 20 years I've been doing this oncology, the three big things I always heard were faith, attitude, and support. So making sure that whatever that looks like to you is as strong as it can be before this starts, and just trying to feed hope and encouragement to him. That's my thought. But I
Thank
wish
you.
you well, Barbara. It sounds like he's got a great team beside him, including you.
Thanks.
And once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1. We will pause for a moment to allow everyone an opportunity to signal. We do have another caller in the queue. We'll hear from.
Thank you. Hello.
Hi, this is Trina.
Hey, Trina.
I'm going to try to hold it together here. My husband is midway through the week of preparation for his transplant that's happening on Friday. It's been a rough journey since August of last year with a high transfusion requirement, so I've taken him to every appointment, been there through God knows how many bags of red blood and platelets, and he fortunately did go into remission after a bumpy ride through the initial chemo. But my question is kind of so I've been trying to do all of that, care for him and keep working full time. And my company's been very supportive. It's a pretty demanding job, but they've been fabulous. I'm trying to kind of understand now when he comes out of the hospital, I'm going to take vacation and then try to take some leave time, but my sense is there's not enough of that to cover the length of this journey. So any advice that you both have about kind of how to balance the time off with the length of the journey? Because I just don't know what I don't know yet about what we're going to be facing and how much I just may have to step away from the job fully and let it be what it'll be, even if there's no job at the end of it. But I carry the health insurance.
Jim, I'll let you go first again on this one.
Well, hi, Trina.
Hi.
You know, everybody's experience is different. And, you know, what we went through may be totally different than what you and your husband are going to go through. But, yeah, I would say for us, and again, I'm not a medical professional. I'm just a caregiver like you. The first couple of months after the transplant really required for me kind of total focus. I had to step away from work, and luckily, you know, was able to take some time off, even if it was unpaid time, to really kind of focus on that. As Jennifer had mentioned earlier, you know, if you have a support team around you that can help you shoulder that load, not knowing how much monitoring your husband is going to require. You know, for us, somebody had to be with Nancy all the time for a couple of months.
Yeah, in the midst of COVID, it's
and we were
really
even pre-COVID, you know, so.
I mean, I've kept everybody away from him. He only sees healthcare professionals because it's just too risky.
Right.
So, yeah, that's a tough nugget.
But, you know, I would just say, you know, I again, your doctors will tell you what's required, but for us, at least a couple of months following the transplant really required us to kind of put everything else on hold, including jobs.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. I kind of thought a couple months, but then it's to the points earlier. You don't know what side road you're going to end up down, so.
Right.
Well, one thing I'm just going to add here, Nancy, is, you know, first of all, asking the doctor what he thinks is going to be the most critical period for him, because everybody's healthcare journey might look different based on what they're going through. And, you know, kind of, I mean, obviously it can change any time, but, you know, if you kind of plan in your head based on what the doctor says, then there might be ways to bring in people down the road here and there where, you know, maybe a partial day where you're actually in the office and, I know COVID has just made everything so much more challenging for all you guys, but one of the things I've heard from several cancer survivors as well as their caregivers is they had to live that way even before COVID came, and there's a certain level of, let's say you even, I don't know what finances are, but like if you even hired a little home help in the later stages, if you were needing a little support but needing to get back to work. Those people have to go through certain health protocols, and of course they're very familiar with hygiene and how to properly wear masks, how to properly take on and off gloves and all of that. Because even at the hospital, all of those people, they have to follow those protocols. And so you're going to do everything in your power to keep him safe, but trying to take it all on yourself for the long haul after the most critical period is going to be really challenging, trying to balance that with work. So trying to find supports that maybe feel safe, or maybe even someone that has a medical background that just really understands, like, okay, these aren't suggestions by the doctor. This is what we have to follow.
Yep. Okay, thanks. That's very helpful.
It's just my thought, but I would suspect as well that probably at least a good couple of months.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. We wish
and
you well,
Trina.
Go ahead, Jake. I'm sorry.
And that's *1 if you do have a question. We'll pause for another moment.
Okay.
And at this time, there is no additional questions in the queue. I'll turn the call back to your host for closing remarks.
Okay. Well, again, I just want to thank Jim, who is just a wealth of knowledge and really showed you a good model of what this can look like working through this together as a team. So thank you, Jim. And I thank you all for joining us today. We hope you could take away at least one tip or tool to help you with your journey. I also want to let everyone know, stay tuned for information coming out next month. We are going to have a lunch and learn about multiple myeloma, and we're going to have a doctor from Fred Hutch Cancer Center, and they're going to be talking about updates coming in regards to care with multiple myeloma, as well as we have an amazing and inspiring patient who's going to be joining us as well. If you would like further information about survivorship issues or supports available, please also feel free to reach out to us at the link at 1-800-LINK-BMT. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to our partners and our sponsors, and I wish you all a great day.